Guys, here we are in our Silhouette Studio software. And when you're dealing with just not the Designer Edition, just the Silhouette Studio software, you can't use the Rhinestone button up here to create rhinestone patterns or templates or freehand yourself, because that button's not going to be activated unless you have the Designer Edition. So let's start talking about just having the Silhouette Studio software. And for that, what you need to do is you need to go ahead and buy some rhinestone images. And what I mean by that is that people have already developed images that have the little circle holes that you need. Now, I pulled up all the rhinestone images in the Silhouette store by just clicking Browse All, going to my filters, just selecting rhinestones and clicking Update Filters, and it brought me all of these. Now, you have these patterns, and most of these patterns, I'm going to click on Tweety here. Most of the patterns give you the size dimension. Let me highlight it right there. They give you the size dimension of the image. All of them that I've seen so far give you the size of the stone and how many of them you're going to need. Now, this part is important because with the Design Studio software, you cannot manipulate the size of the image. Okay, so let me come back over this way. I'm coming into my library. Now let's say you bought something and you forgot, how many rhinestones was that supposed to be? If you go ahead and right click the image, go to show properties, in the box, all the ones that I've seen, the description tells you how many of what size rhinestone you're going to need for that particular image. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up one. Let's open up this cherry. Okay, so now we have our cherry on our mat, and let me zoom in a little bit so that you can see. And like I said, here's going to be the problem. Because it is a cut file, meaning someone sized out individually the size the rhinestones were going to be. If you select it and you make it bigger, just like any other cut file that we use when we're trying to resize, the holes either get dramatically small, and that pinched in, or the holes get bigger. And what that means is that it's not holding to the size that you originally had in your description about how many rhinestones of a particular size that it was going to need. So as you saw on the Tweety Bird one, it told you, do not resize. You can't resize this. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't make your own template when you're in just the Silhouette Studio Edition. You can, and this is how. Now, keeping it the size that it was. That being said, there is a way for you to be able to design on your own, if you're that ambitious and have that much time, your own type of silhouette cut file without having the Designer Edition and employing this button over here, which we'll get to in a sec. This is an image. All those pieces are grouped together. Ungroup them. Single out one of those, go to your copy, click your paste, and now you have that lone size, whatever millimeter it was, rhinestone shape, and you can go ahead and copy and paste and duplicate and take away and put in and create your own image. Again, it'll take a lot of time, but it can be done. So if you say, look, I just want to do something really small and I can plot it all myself, I don't Designer Edition, that is one way to try to create your own template. Like I said, time consuming, but it is a way. So now let's start talking about this little button up here and the Designer Edition differences. And now let's talk this button right here, which gets fully employed when you have the Designer Edition software. And what you get is the Rhinestone panel. And the Rhinestone panel, there's a couple of boxes, so let's talk about those first. The first one is the effects box. Obviously, there's a none, there's an edge, a linear fill, and a radial fill. We're going to talk about those in a second. And none of them are lit because we don't have any type of image on our mat, or selected, I should say. Then the next box is the rhinestone size. So you're going to get the 6, the 10, the 16, and the 20. And I don't remember what they mean in millimeters. But you have that. You have a rhinestone spacing bar, which gives you greater distance. It's just like letter spacing or anything like that. How much distance in between each rhinestone to the next one. This allows you, this box, this draw rhinestone, allows you to freehand and draw your own templates and do different things, because you can select a particular one, you can do a single click, a freehand, we're going to talk about that, and this one has release rhinestones. And we're going to talk about what that means in a second too. The other box that is here stays on the bottom, and while you're doing whatever design you're doing, it's going to tell you how many of those rhinestones you're going to need to do your project. So let's start by making a simple box and a simple square on our mat, and then work with these boxes. So let's select our box first and go from there. Okay everyone, so now here's our rectangle and here's our square. And the reason why I have these two basic shapes first is because I want to show you about the linear and the radial fill and how they really look different. So I'm going to select the rectangle, and as you can see, I've got my words and light up in this effects box now. So I'm going to go to edge, and as you can see, it just makes that rhinestone pattern along that cut edge. Now I can change the size of the rhinestones that I want to use. And as I told you before, if you look at the bottom, it's going to tell you you need 32 of those rhinestones if you do it that size. Now, linear is exactly what you think it means. It's going to make those rhinestones in a line. And so they now look all nice and uniform. If I was to select this and do radial, you'll see that it gets really spacey in between, and it doesn't actually work with uniformity there. If I come over to the circle and I select linear, again, it doesn't really make all of the spots because it wants to go straight across, straight across. If I select this image again and I do radial, you'll see that this pattern is now in a circle, and it's all spaced out really evenly. And again, you can change the size. Well, first you got to select it. You can change the size of your rhinestones, and when you look at the bottom, it's going to tell you how many of that particular rhinestone that you need for this particular shape. Okay, now let's talk about our ability to manipulate images that you may have in your cut file. So I've got two different images out that of course I could cut out with my blade using my silhouette. But what if I want to make them into rhinestone patterns? Well, we've selected this image. You can go here and select edge, and it's going to be the edge going around. You can change the size if you want to find which is the best size. Let's just say though that what you have are the 20 SS rhinestones and you want to use those. You can Designer Edition make your image bigger, which in this case helps to even out the spacing of the rhinestones. But you can make your image bigger or smaller without distorting the size of the rhinestone. So unlike when we had this cherry over here that was already designed and made, and you couldn't make it any bigger because it changed the size of the rhinestone, this one, if it's from a 20 or if it was done as a 10, it's going to keep the rhinestone size even as you make your image bigger or smaller. Okay, so now let's do this nice figure right here. The same thing can happen. You can go ahead and you can do an edge. You can figure out what size you want to do it. You know, that makes maybe too big. You can then do linear or radial. And I actually like linear better than radial. But let's just say you see this space up in here. You wanted to have some, you wanted that filled in. You just wanted that filled in. Let me show you what you can do. I'm going to get up nice and close. You can come here to single click in your draw rhinestones, and you can go ahead and click in rhinestones to fill that blank space. So if I go back out, go out a little bit more, now we filled in that line that was there before. Now really quickly, let's talk letters and being able to make a saying in a rhinestone pattern that you want. So you can do that a couple of ways. You can go into your textile box. I like Yearbook Solid so far. Haven't tried all the fonts, but this is a cool one. I'm going to go ahead and click my rhinestone button again, and I'm going to go edge. Now you can see, you really can't tell what that is. You can move it down to 6, but if you really had your heart set on like 16 or 10, remember, you're in the designer edition. You can make this a little bit bigger. So maybe you make it a little bit bigger, you make it smaller, you make it thicker. However you want to do it to get the fill in that you want. You can fill them in however it is. So you can use the fonts that you find in your Silhouette Studio on your computer and change them into rhinestone patterns. But there is going to be some tweaking and some refining and some other things going on with this shape. Guys, now let's finish off with this other element in the Draw Rhinestones box right here. And it's something called Freehand. And I'm not an artist, so in the sense of I can't draw. But let's just say I wanted to make my own hand version of a crooked heart, clearly. Okay. You can freehand and draw what you want to draw. Now, the same thing holds true if you select it and you change the size of the rhinestones, you can. Okay. If you select and you want to, because when I say select, and the reason why you're seeing the double boxes overlap is, remember, I drew these in 2 different segments. So I drew this little piece in one segment and the other piece. So if I want them all to be the same size, I have to select both. But if you want to change the spacing, you can. Completely up to you how you want that to be done. Now, let's say you want this piece moved from right there. Go ahead and select that part and then click Release Rhinestones. Once you've done that, you're going to be able to pull away individual rhinestones from your image because you've released them from that flow from which you've put them in. Okay guys, so that's pretty much what I know about this rhinestone box in the Designer Edition Studio. And I've pretty much told you what I've gleaned so far from using the rhinestone applications, or for what you can and can't do, whether when you're using just the Silhouette Studio software and when you're using the Silhouette Studio Designer Edition software. If anyone else has got some great tips or tricks on how to manipulate the rhinestones on in the software, love to hear them. I'm actually working on a project right now, so you'll probably see a video of the rhinestone stuff getting cut out and it being applied onto some type of fabric project that I have cooking in my head that I've started, I just haven't finished. So hopefully we'll get that video up later on this month. Happy crafting, everyone!